I was hoping for Kenobi. But instead, I have Pete Wright and AKA Hab, and we are here on the Star Wars Generations podcast to talk about Maul Shadow Lord. We are up to episode 6, and we're checking in. Pete was here for us discussion early episodes. AK hasn't been here yet, but as someone who has dedicated their life to the study of folks like Moby Dick, a character that had just a little bit of an obsession with someone who they were trying to get revenge on, there might be some relevant things to discuss here with Maul Shadow Lord. So I'm so glad to have both of you on. I, of course, am Matthew, the Ethical Panda, your host. AK, let's just jump in with you. We're halfway through Shadow Lord. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really enjoying it. I think that what's strange to me is I'm watching this show and I like love this show and I'm a little bit like, why is this a mall show? Is kind of my like primary feeling because I feel like the new characters that have been introduced are super interesting and super compelling. Um, and I'm loving seeing Maul just kind of aura farm all over the place. But like
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see where they're going to go with him as a character. And like, I feel like there's a lot of implied growth that has happened for this character between kind of the last time we saw him and where he is now. And I'm curious how there's kind of this, how we're going to have the continuity between like end of Clone Wars Maul, Maul, Shadow Lord Maul, and Rebels Maul, like how we're going to
Mm-hmm.
make those connections happen. So that's what I'm most interested about seeing, I think.
So just, I of course am hip to the kids lingo, but just for Pete and for any of our listeners, can you explain what the term aura farming means?
Yeah, I mean, he just looks swag as all get out. He's really just
That
there
didn't help.
to pose on losers, I guess. I don't know. He's got a presence, you know. He walks into a room and the whole room kind of stops and looks at Maul, and that's
Yeah.
just kind of always who he's been as a character. And it's good to see that kind of come back in a way that's being really well done. The animation is beautiful. I mean, I'm really enjoying that a lot too.
I think it's a great way to describe it. And I think it kind of addresses what you were saying at the beginning that to me, Maul isn't necessarily the main character in that he's the person with the most lines in this show, but he is the center of gravity in this show. Everything that
Yeah.
is happening, all of the other characters' storylines are being deeply affected by him. And it's almost sort of like um you could watch the TV show The Acolyte. You could also call it The Stranger because it was just as much about him and how he influenced the Acolyte's journey. And I think this time we're getting a little more focus on him than we did on The Stranger, but still, it's all these other people: Devin, Docky, Lawson, Riley. All their stories are being deeply affected by what's happening in the mall.
Yeah, I think he is more effective. And let me just say, I know what aura farming was, Matthew. Come on.
I
Just
did.
for the record.
Uh huh.
uh, I think that it is a really provocative kind of position that they make this character um, so central to the title card, and yet he's
Yeah.
barely. It's like talking about 5 and 6. He's barely in 5 and 6, but when he is, that opening sequence of 6, when he's doing his routine, right? He's doing his
Mm-hmm.
sort of kata, whatever that they call that, gives us a sense of interiority for Maul that I don't know that we've ever gotten for that character. The fact that he's barely in the thing until the tram sequence where he takes over, they damn near make Maul a sympathetic character. And I think that's a bit of jujitsu that they're doing in this show,
Yeah.
to make us care about this thing and reframe the orbit around which our understanding of Maul lives for every other interpretation of Maul.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Well, one phrase that I've been using a lot, and I want to hear if you two guys agree with this: Maul to me is a Cassandra figure, in that
Hmm.
he's always telling the truth. And this is true going all the way back to, end of the Clone Wars, where what he's telling Ahsoka literally what's actually happening in terms of Palpatine is Sidious and Anakin's going to fall. Ahsoka doesn't want to believe it. Here, he's telling Devin all of these things about like the Empire is taking over. We need to fight it. We can't just be complacent and hide the way your master does. The master's saying Maul is full of lies. Maul has an agenda. Maul is manipulating her, but he's not lying. And same thing will happen with him and Ezra in Rebels. And I feel for me, that's where a lot of the sympathy comes from, is that I know he's a terrible guy. I know he's not, he has his own agenda, but he's also the only one who knows the truth, and no one will believe him. And to me, that just makes him so like you have to cry along with him.
Yeah, I mean, Maul is like a very tragic character, and I know I've heard Sam Witwer describe him before as like a very Sisyphus character. He just keeps pushing that rock up the hill,
Mm-hmm.
and in like the existentialist sense of like we're all people who have gone through shit and are like still trying to find reasons to keep going. I think Maul is very sympathetic because he has been through a lot. Like we know he's been discarded and like left behind and abused and like gone through some really messed up stuff, and now he's just like, well, where do I find my allies to try and
Yeah.
take back what's mine? And that's pretty compelling. I think what's funny for me about some of the interiority of what we're seeing of Maul is like I'm not sure it actually lines up with the Maul we know. And
Yeah.
I think that's like it has a lot of potential that I'm like excited about on the one hand, and on the other hand I'm like, ooh, are they going to be able to square this? And I think
Mm.
the opening sequence where he's doing the form, I rewatched that like 5 times in a row, and then went and immediately watched the Phantom Menace fight, and then went and watched the Clone Wars fight with him and Ahsoka, because that form does not fit his usual fighting style like at
Mm-hmm.
all. And I that could be a really interesting thing, or it could be something that just kind of isn't explained. I'm hoping that they give us some like answers for that.
Yeah.
That is the sort of juggernaut of a task that comes from, and I think it's a it's a Filoni-esque kind of operation where you just write yourself into a corner and just say, I wonder if we can get out of it, right? That's kind
Mm-hmm.
of what makes it fun. But I totally see that could also be an oncoming train wreck, right? Just not being able to square this character who is, by all accounts, for a lot of fans, beloved in this universe, right?
Right.
It is a complicated character. But it makes me, just hearing you talk about it, it makes me push back on this idea of Maul being manipulative. Is he manipulative if he's speaking the truth? He has an agenda, but at no point is he using facts against
Right.
anyone else other than just like, I'm going to tell you what's happening. And his line, now you have seen the face of evil, right? You have seen the
Right.
face of your enemy. It rings really loud in the context of Maul being a speaker of truth.
I guess for me, and this is how I kind of actually address both of these, I think a lot of where the manipulation for me comes from is the way he is very intentionally pushing Devin towards the dark side. And I think it's one of the best seductions to the dark. And I hate that that's the best word because he's an adult and she's a teenage girl. And so I don't mean it in that sense at all, but I do think that it is an appropriate word if you can divorce it from any of the it container. But
Isn't that the
the
same thing the Jedi do, though? I mean, they're all
yeah, I
just
mean,
like
yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's
just
the
provoking children into action.
bringing someone, yeah, into that mindset.
Yeah.
And I think he's very intentionally like pushing buttons. But I think you're right. And I think, and here's where I think it does really fit with who he is. I think the low hanging fruit would have been for this show to basically make him Saw Gerrera Luthen, but even more so. Like, yes, he has bad methods. Yes, you disagree with him, but he's basically just one more rebel fighting the Empire. And I like that they're not doing that. He is still very much trying to take over a criminal enterprise. He is still very much he is not anywhere close to anti-hero status. He is a bad guy who is killing innocent people because he wants power. He just also happens to understand that Darth Sidious and the Empire are real, real bad. And, because I think that, like, if the end result is that Devin goes to seek out Luthen or whatever group is out there, that's not what he wants. He wants Devin to work with him so that he can replace Sidious. So to me, I guess that's why I think of it as manipulative still, because there is still very much his own agenda that he is somewhat hiding from Devin as he tries to push her along with also the way he's manipulating all these different criminal groups to fight with each other, again, so that he can take power.
I think there's a bit of armchairing going on where I want to push back and have no data or no facts to do this with, but I do feel like if let's just say Devin comes to Maul and says, why are you doing this? I have no doubt in my mind that he would say actively exactly what you just described. And is that manipulation? That's just presentation of current events. The facts, let the facts speak for themselves, is
I think
Maul's identity.
I think Maul is lying to himself too much to be able to like intentionally lie to other people. Because I think Maul thinks he
Yeah, that's a good
wants
point.
Yeah.
revenge, right? When Maul says and speaks, and maybe this is where the fighting thing gets squared. When he's doing his form, he's got this very fluid, very high, swordsman style movement. But when he's in the moment, when he's in the fight, he fights like a brute. And I
Yeah,
think
he's
it's
brutal.
very similar philosophically. Like he has all these high minded ideas. He thinks he's
Right.
evolved. But at the end of the day, he's like deeply steeped in the dark side. And that gets the better of him when
Yeah.
he's in a situation. Why is he fighting crime lords? If he wants to be like dealing with Palpatine, go deal with Palpatine. Like there's bigger stuff out there for you to be doing. You don't need to have like revenge on all these small crime bosses that you're dealing
Yeah.
with. And so he's being like genuine to Devin, but he's lying to himself about his own motivations and his own status in the world he's in.
Yeah. And I think that right there is what squares the circle for me about where he fits. And I agree, the lightsaber stuff might be different, although I will say, and I've been banging this drum for a while, that if you're a Star Wars Legends fan, like more and more stuff from those books is being brought into these stories. And one thing he often does in the Legends books about him is practice his forms and his fighting. In part, and this is actually something that Jonah and I talked about in our episode about the myth of Maul before the myth and the way he appears in those Legends novels. Because one thing we talked about is he wants to be Sidious. He wants to be the master manipulator and the politician, but he wasn't raised to that. He was raised to be an attack dog. He was raised to be brutal violence and fighting. And in some ways, that's the curse that he's always had, And again, I'm a very big believer in explanations, not excuses. The fact that he is a person who was horrifically abused as a child does not excuse the terrible things he does now, but it certainly helps explain it. And I think that the idea that he always wanted for Sidious to look at him as the way he looks at Anakin, and instead Sidious only just saw him as go kill these people, go steal this thing, go do that. It makes sense that not only is he still that, but he's jealous of Anakin. He's incredibly Anakin is what he always wanted to be to Sidious, and Anakin / Vader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny to hear you say that because we're painting a picture here of Maul as a character whose aspirations exceed his abilities.
Yes.
Right. And that is, as a fan, that's almost hard to swallow because it's accurate. Like it rings as accurate and it makes this character deeply sad, like much more dour and colorless than the impression you get in any of his interpretations on screen so far, right? That ultimately, how could this end in his favor? We know where he goes, and he's constantly that Sisyphean role model, right? He's constantly fighting the same battles, and he never really gets anywhere, and that is deeply sad.
See, and I would say that I think that's been in his on-screen interpretations going all the way back to like ever since he popped back up in Clone Wars. He had this tragic story with his brother and the attempt to get back into Sidious's favor. He has this scene, like, I think one of the best lines in all of Star Wars is where Ahsoka basically, like, she breaks him out of prison and he has a moment of like, are we finally going to team up? Are we going to fight the Empire? And she's like, I want you to go fight these soldiers as a distraction. I'm not rooting for you. Is her literal line. And she doesn't give him a weapon. And you get where she's coming from, but it's all the way to, forgive me for spoilers for something that's 10 years out, but in Rebels, his death scene, I cannot watch that without crying. Like, it is such a beautiful, tragic death scene. And the fact that Obi-Wan is there to embrace him and hold him. And you wish they would just kiss already, but like, it's just such a like enemies to respecting each other. They should have been lovers, Filoni, you coward. But you know what I mean? Like, so I think that putting the fan fiction of it aside, I'm just saying I think the tragedy there has always been part of the on-screen stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It does give us, when you think about the sort of characters under pressure, as good as episodes 5 and 6 are for Maul, it still is just a reminder that Rook and the Mandalorians are under pressure, kind of figuring out what their role is in this criminal enterprise. And I think that's the risk ahead of sort of the three vectors. First of all, who is Merrick, reporting to? What is the
Right.
imperial vector? What is his own potential to interior or internal mutiny brewing around the Mandalorians? All while he's making these decisions that everybody around him seems to think are suspect. His motivation to connect with Devon, and yet he's still fighting that same ideological battle.
Yeah. AK, can we draw any parallels with another person who has authority over a group of people? You might even say a crew, but is so obsessed with one particular goal that a lot of them are questioning his sanity and whether he should be part of this project.
Yeah, I mean, Captain Ahab is a character who's like so classic in American literature, in part because it doesn't have to go the way it does. Like he has people who actually care about him in the background, like trying to push him down the right path. And it's not something I'm sure Maul has, or at least not something he has yet. Like I think Ahsoka is kind of the closest we get as like a person who really tries to like have a conversation with him and push him down the right path. What's interesting about like Rook, and then the two Zabrak brothers, one of them is named Icarus, and I don't remember the other one's name, but is that we see them like following Maul with this kind of like quiet and undying loyalty, but nobody within Maul's circle has really like pushed back on him that hard yet. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting for the moment when that happens to see whether Maul will take that, like take some sort of redirection or recourse, or do the classic Sith thing of you questioned me, so now you die. Um, because I think this is the most like refined we've seen Maul. He's acting very controlled, at least for the most part right now. Like his interactions with Devon, he's been very careful, very precise, very calm. And I'm wondering if that will translate over if one of his internal crew tries to kind of push him in a direction in a way that, Captain Ahab was never going to go, because like he had already gone so far down this path that even his closest friends couldn't like get to him. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure that Maul is actually 100% there yet. And where he ends up in Rebels makes me think he maybe wasn't, because he does kind of get more and more willing to like let parts of Sith philosophy go so that he can get to these aims that he has that are like secondary or tertiary. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think Maul has a white whale the same way Ahab does. Like his white whale is maybe Palpatine, but he's not like going straight for Palpatine. He's picking off these other small things on the way. And
Right.
Ahab, as soon as they're on the boat, is like, we are here for one thing and one thing only, which is Moby Dick. So we're gonna find him. And Maul's not doing that, which is r- really interesting, because I'm again wondering how he squares that with himself of like he has these big philosophical ideological goals and his actions aren't aimed directly at them. So what are they?
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because there's the long-term motivation and the short-term motivation. And I'm with you. I wonder what, if the ultimate motivation does end in Palpatine, in that sort of vindication. Because right now it seems like, he's collecting power, right? He does have
Right.
this sort of mafioso drive to just be the head of something. I
Mm-hmm.
just am not sure how well thought out that is, if the ultimate design is to get to Palpatine. I'm sure on a comic level, like just sort of the broad strokes level, there is the, eventually he'll get to Palpatine somehow.
Right.
But I don't know if the micro stories support it as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, I think in part, like he has mentioned Sidious once or twice already in this show, and he
Mhm.
talks about it obviously in both Rebels and Clone Wars. But I think it's part of that idea of that he's not a great planner. Like in his
Yeah.
head, he knows you amass a power base in order to take on another power base, but the details are not his thing.
Well, and the other piece is that this is also, you could turn this into a father-son story, right? Like Palpatine was his motivating anchor for a long
Right.
time, and the act of him collecting power from the ground up is also kind of a demonstration of like Dad, look how far I've come without you, right?
Yeah.
This is an establishment of my identity, and I'm doing it on the dark side, and that may not be great for the rest of the universe, but I am doing it to show up and show you what I can do, and look how powerful I can become without you, out of your
Yeah.
shadow. And he needs Palpatine alive and well to see that happen in order for that bit of interiority to come to the surface.
Yeah. No, and I do think that's true. And I think that in some ways, Obi-Wan has also been a stand-in for that, kind of off and on. And at this point in the
Absolutely.
story, he thinks Obi-Wan is dead. And so it
Mhm.
makes sense it shifts back to Palpatine. Because we're talking about fathers and sons, I want to get to Merrick and some other things, but let's talk a bit about I'm liking the show, and somehow it makes it work, but it does feel like we have 3 or 4 different genres that are all happening at the same time. And, we've got our short little guy who thinks that he's in The Wire or Sopranos or something like that. But in the not terribly imaginatively named Officer Lawson, who is the lawman with a plot around his son, we see more about the plot about his son. We get to hear about his ex-wife, who's joined the Empire, and is clearly having trouble acknowledging that the Empire might be bad. Is this Lethal Weapon? Like, it just feels like I am enjoying that story and it fits, but it feels like I'm so ready for Bruce Willis to play this character. So I've seen this show of the struggling single dad cop so many times. How is that how is that Lawson story hitting you?
I am really liking the dynamic between Lawson, and his son, and particularly Two Boots, and kind of the commentary going on between, like, what happens when, the government is corrupt and you have law enforcement that's automated, because they think they have this relationship with Two Boots that does not actually exist, because Two Boots' protocol is to serve a fascist empire. And I think that has been a really interesting, like, thing to watch play out, especially because Lawson's having to go, okay, well, am I actually going to stick with law enforcement? And in an age of, really having conversations about what the role of law enforcement is, and like whether or not you could be a good person and stay in a position of power that's being run by a fascist empire, I think that's really compelling. I don't know that I care yet that much about whatever's going on between him and his son specifically. I hope that I will care at some point, but if not,
Mhm.
whatever. Like, sometimes Star Wars just throws stuff like that in, and I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. But
Space
I think the
Lacrosse has not caught your attention yet?
no, but I do think the dynamic within the station is really interesting.
Yeah.
That's definitely my point, my place too. I have so far, Lawson's son has given me very little to be interested in. I don't know that I'm there. I don't know that trying to set up the relationship between, Brander and that's his name, right? Or was that's the detective? What's his son's name? Anyway, Riley. I don't think Riley and Devin, putting them together was terribly compelling for that action beat for me. I didn't need that. I am vastly more interested in, the ongoing discussion of, Two Boots, blind faith in protocol, that entire discussion of like, this is going to be fine. You're all just underestimating protocol, and then it observably not be fine. Was a really fun bit to have go on. And I think that, the little moments that tell so much story, right? Going into Lawson going into the interrogation room and seeing the scratches on the desk. That's a lot of storytelling that they don't need to do and get the just general vibe across incredibly effectively.
Yeah, I really agree. I'm laughing at the 90s cop movie kind of attitude of it, because it's just not, I don't really know why it's there. And I think the story of his ex being someone who's gone to work for the Empire, and that's like, it gives some flavor to it, but a lot of it seems very tropey. And I agree with you. I really don't want a Riley Devin romance. I mean, I think something about, she is at the age that I think a story of part of her questioning the Jedi is, hey, wait, boys are cute. Why am I supposed to not think about that? Or girls are cute, or whatever it is. Like, hormones are a
cute,
thing.
Matthew. Cute is cute.
Cute is cute. And like a teenager thinking denying all of your hormonal instincts is maybe not the best path. Like that's a worthy story. But there's nothing about Riley that I'm finding like compelling there. And I love what you two both harbored on, because to me, as I look at our own world, one thing I think about a lot is I grew up, and I don't know if this was you two. My mother was somewhat not this, but my father was definitely if you have a problem, you can call the cops. It's going to be okay. And I certainly don't, after living under Giuliani, I certainly didn't believe that. And I very much don't believe that. And I think, if one of my friends, particularly a friend of color, is having a real like episode, calling the cops could be putting them in real danger. And that's very much the story that I'm seeing here of Two Boots being the one who doesn't get, one of my favorite lines is when he says to Riley, thinking this is reassuring, when and if your father comes out of interrogation, I'm sure everything will be fine.
Yeah.
You don't put if in that sentence if your goal is reassurance.
It's interesting what they give to Two Boots too, right? They do give a bit of identity concern when the lieutenant says, "Take off your boots." That's in the name, man.
Yeah.
That is like questioning a default protocol for this robot, and giving the robot a chance to reflect. I think it was a nice little beat. The thing that a question I have for both of you is how these episodes hit you in regard to the stuff that I really liked the most, the Janix kind of crime noir story regarding the police. Some of my favorite stuff in the first 4 episodes, and now I worry about us landing in a much more familiar Jedi Purge story. And that feels like one of the Star Wars tropes that the Star Wars industrial complex is not able to let go right now. And I worry about that, because I think it's worth debating where does the story start to shift in a way that lets go of novelty, that lets go of some of the insight, playing some new instruments in Star Wars. Do you guys have thoughts?
So I'm a big believer that in rehabilitation stories and in stories of people trying to conquer their own demons, you have to reward victories even if they're small. And when Master Daki said, you have to understand the tragedy that we live through of the purge, Filoni wrote a flashback scene that was supposed to happen. And somehow he was convinced we can have one piece of product that doesn't include an Order 66 flashback scene. And I want to give him flowers for that. I want to say, good day. You came right up to the edge. You filled the needle. You had it near your arm, but you put the bottle down, to mix the metaphors. And I mean, but putting it, so I was really glad we didn't have that flashback. I was thinking, in some ways, I'm a little sad that we have sort of been told that Darth Talon is supposed to come about, because given everything we know about Darth Talon, Devin is a much more likely candidate. But because part of what I was thinking was that we've seen numerous occasions now of a Padawan's master is killed, in part because they're not willing to do what they need to survive in the post-Order 66 world, and so the Padawan joins the dark side. I think it'd be kind of more interesting if Devin dies and Master Daki joins the dark side. But I don't know if short little lizard man is going to become the super sexy Darth Talon that all the fanboys are wanting. Which I hope they're not going to go that direction anyway. But like, I think we're set up pretty clearly for it to be Devin, and I do think it's going to be a little tropey. And I wish we weren't quite as on rails with that.
One of my hopes is that this Inquisitor they've introduced, which I don't think we've seen this Inquisitor before. Love them. Their vibe is great. My hope is that is somehow like a bigger piece of this story than I think it's looking like right now. Because I feel like if Devin realizes that, like this is a Jedi who's now hunting down other Jedi, or Devin has an encounter with this Inquisitor where, because I imagine what's going to happen is this Inquisitor is going to kill Daki, and then Devin's going to like go ballistic about it, and then Maul's going to be like, ha ha ha. But I think it'd be more interesting if this Inquisitor character plays a different role, or like joins up with Maul, or joins up with the Jedi to get Maul. Like, does the Inquisitor care more about getting the Jedi here or getting Maul here? And then what are these other two characters going to do in relation to that? I think would be interesting to see happen. But I am worried we're just going to kind of go down the expected route of, okay, this Inquisitor is now a thing that's going to kill the Jedi Master. The kid's going to get upset. Maul's going to be the obvious turn to.
So we do sort of know who the Inquisitor is.
From Ahsoka.
It was not mentioned in the show itself, but if you watched with the captions on, the character's named is Merrick. And Merrick is the Force user, not Balin and his apprentice Hadi, but the I think it's right, Hati, Shin Hadi. But the other one who might have been like a green gas ghost. We're not sure. So I don't think the last response episode to these said that, well, but he has plot armor. We know he lives. And Aaron pointed out, no, we don't. Like, because he could be
Right.
a zombie by Ahsoka. So we know some of his background, but not all. Because yeah, I think it'd be great if he becomes Maul's apprentice, but I'm torn because I do think, and again, I'm a huge Acolyte stan, as much as I think that show had a lot of problems, but as much as I love the original trilogy, I have always thought Palpatine's idea of, hey, Luke, look, there's a trap. Ha ha ha, I'm so good, I'm going to make you fall into the trap. Aren't I tricky? And Luke saying, no, I'm not going to fall into the trap, is not a very good job of convincing someone to join the dark side. And I love stories where it is. And so, like, to me, those scenes of Maul subtly pushing Devon's buttons and bringing out her anger and bringing out her resentments, I think are the best of the show so far. And so I wouldn't mind seeing more of that. But I do think you're right that if we move away from the mob story and just get a lot of lightsaber battles and, oh no, Dockie's killed, none of us saw that coming, and oh no, Devon's upset about that would be disappointing.
Yeah. I think it would, because it takes us a step back when so many of these other properties that were prematurely canceled were taking steps forward in ways that I think were really satisfying. And I hate to think that this, which has had such a good start, is on track for a miss.
Yeah.
I have a similar concern about whoever it was that this Inquisitor just reported to. I heard just hints of the dum at the end of that episode. I'm like, are we gonna get a Vader cameo? Because on the one hand, it's hard to like be bummed about that potentially being an option, because I love Darth Vader. It'd be super cool to see him show up. And on the other hand, I'm like, but now we're in a show that's gonna be like about Darth Vader for a minute,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
damn sure you're gonna get a hallway fight scene again.
Right.
I mean, maybe we could let it go. And you know what? I'm not sure. I think when we were talking about episodes 1 and 2, there was a part of me that thought, okay, by the end we have to build toward Sidious. At some point, he's already dropping the names. At some point, he's got to get there. Even though, in my heart of hearts, I would love it to be season 2 or season 3. Like, let's give him some runway to actually tell some stories before he gets to the full vindication arc. But honestly, I don't know if I'd be excited for either one of those to be the my lord respondent. I don't know if either one of those would be interesting. If it's a Grand Inquisitor, right, some other sort of chain of command, would he be calling them my lord? I don't think so, really, but I really am hoping that it's not who I think it is. I hope they throw something sideways, because everything else, more Inquisitors, even Vader himself, like, that lands hard in a kind of predictable way for episodes 7 and 8.
Yeah, and it's something we've seen a bunch. Not only this, but also if you've played the Jedi Fallen Order games, that same plot line turns up there. And also, just even if we get Vader, I think our choices are Hayden Christensen as voice actor, which doesn't really seem right with all the voice box stuff, or the AI version of James Earl Jones, which, granted, James Earl Jones volunteered for.
Yep.
Unlike a lot of the other people, like Peter Cushing with Tarkin, but still is going to feel weird. Or it's someone trying to do an approximation of Vader, which doesn't really work either. So yeah, I don't love any of those options. I want the story to kind of stay here. And also, for me, one of the problems of prequels is you throw in a whole bunch of stuff and then wonder why the story that was made 10 years ago never mentions these now very important plot details. And so we do know that later on in the story, Maul is going to talk to Ezra and talk to Obi-Wan about the list of grievances he has against Sidious. And so if he takes someone under his wing as an apprentice, and we have 2 seasons of them getting really close, and then Sidious kills that apprentice, And now we go back to Rebels, and he doesn't mention that as one of the grievances. That's going to be, it's these middle properties. It's part of why I thought the show Obi-Wan Kenobi had so many problems, because, we go from the fight on Mustafar to the circle is now complete, and now turn out there's something in the middle there, and it just doesn't fit. So I was so hopeful and excited about this show, and now you two are giving me all these reasons to be nervous.
No. I'm kind of hopeful that Maul ultimately does to Devin what Palpatine did to him, which is betray his apprentice. Like, I think that would be an interesting full circle moment for Maul to go like, oh, the dark side actually does do this to people. And like, I've made this mistake the same way like Sidious made it to me. Because I think if we had 2 seasons of them adventuring and exploring together, and then she turns on Maul, or she starts to go back towards the light side, or she makes a decision he doesn't like, and he goes, okay, we're done now, that would be really compelling. But that requires like the Sidious plot and like the Empire thing kind of being secondary to the Maul and Devin plot, which I'm not sure they'll do.
Yeah, because it was if this season is Darth Talon's origin story, and I think I can be okay with that if then we get a lot of, because a lot of it's about, because remember also we talked about like where he is in Clone Wars, where he is in Rebels. The next stop on the Maul story is Solo, is us seeing him be the head of Crimson Dawn. And so if that's what we kind of spend a lot of time building to, I think it works, because then it also is much more the mob story. And that short guy, I love him. I forget what his name is, but
Vario,
thank you.
I love Vario.
I like how he just keeps stroking his gills. It just makes me happy as a character move.
Better than, what was the other one's name? I think it's like Maledictus or something. Like, it was some, if you put the 2 parts of his name together, they form a very obvious word that now I can't remember. We get angry emails about that. But and I love your idea, AK, of I don't want her to go back to the light, but like if she joins the Inquisitors, if maybe like her and Rook team up to try and take Maul down, because that's what the Sith that's what the dark side is supposed to do. That could be fun.
Can I ask a subject change question?
Yeah.
Speaking of armchairing, it feels to me like casting Tamlin Tomita as Drea, Riley's mom, is a weird push, right? She obviously works somehow for the Empire. This is this is one of those like very much a Doyleist approach to the show, right? Like I'm looking at it from a casting potential and not in story. But why did they give her, this actress with 150 credits, some odd? She's been around for decades. She's incredible. A 90-second scene? What is going on with this family that needs to continue to be excised through the course of the story? There's something going on here that I feel like I'm underthinking, and that may give Riley more agency in the story. It may make Riley a more compelling character than just like low rent Dawson running around his dad's office.
Maybe Riley will end up working for the Empire. Like maybe him and Devin will be friends and split.
Would that would be a story, right? That would be something. Maybe Riley's the next Inquisitor. I'm here for it.
Anything's possible.
Here for it.
First of all, I'll say I'm glad you pointed that out, because I had no idea who she was. I just don't have a good ear for voices, and I hadn't looked it up. But especially given all the work I did on Cobra Kai, I probably should have been able to track her.
Yeah.
She made her debut as Danny LaRusso's love interest in Karate Kid Part 2, and then came back as that same character.
Yep.
I think, though, for me, part of the story that they're telling is, and again, this is Filoni going back to his old favorites, but it is a really good favorite, is the slow story of the acceptance of fascism. And at the same time, the slow building of resistance to fascism. And I think a story that has a great deal of relevance for us right now is what happens when the lived reality of your family clashes with the ideology that the church or the government or whoever is telling you. Because and with Two Boots and the mother, we have these kind of parallel stories of they've both been told it is going to be okay. The Empire is going to make it okay. So what happens to a woman when does she still have feelings for her ex-husband? If he becomes an enemy of the Empire, does that make her more sympathetic to him? Does that make her more mad at him and now want more custody of the kid because he's putting the kid in danger and the Empire, they'll be safe? Does it put the kid in a place where he has to choose between the two? I think to me it is absolutely assured at this point that Two Boots is going to have a face turn, and whether Riley or the mother or anyone else has a face turn, or whether they become someone who just digs in and has to say, like, if you believe, if you think that the Empire is wrong, then you're not my son anymore. I feel like there's a story with incredible dramatic weight that can be told there. I don't know if we have enough of these characters to get there in a show that also is the mob story and also is the story of Devon's fall. I'd love it if they could do all three of those, but I think that's what they're trying to do with the story. I just worry it's going to kind of get short shrift because it is a very complex and hard story to tell.
I mean, we've done the great work of that story in Andor, right? Like we've really done the great work of that story in Andor, and how much are they able to sort of pull from that aesthetic, that sort of cultural aesthetic, to get us to those same feelings? I don't know.
I could also see this being something they develop, like if this show ends up with more seasons, like laying some groundwork for it now and fleshing it out later. Because the other thing is, this is, it's a big name, it's a big actress, but Star Wars is also known for throwing big people in and giving them short little roles because it's like a fun thing to do. So
I think there's a lot of actors and actresses out there who are very happy to have.
I'll take 90 seconds in a Star Wars property any day.
You remember Christian Slater waking up the captain in some Star Wars movie.
100%.
Christian Slater can say he was in a Star Wars movie. Star Trek.
Was outstanding.
Yeah. Pete, I know we have to have you go in a second. I'm going to cut this out and then put it back in. Sure. I'm also going to make a second 30-second ad for getting people to listen to the second half of the show. So I'm going to ask, what are you excited about going forward? And if you can give me something just like quick and punchy, totally off the top of your head, I'm sure, about what you're excited about for both of you, that'd be awesome. So I know, Pete, you have to go in a few minutes. Nick, I don't want to keep you too long either. We've talked about a lot of our concerns. We got 6 more episodes. What are you excited about? What are you looking for the rest of Maul?
I am really excited to see Devon develop. I think her lightsaber form and fighting style is awesome. It's one we've not really seen before. She whipped out her little pose early on, and I was like, that's a new iconic lightsaber pose, immediately. So I'm excited to see her fight more. I'm excited to see her character go somewhere. I'm excited to see what breaks her. She's kind of the most interesting part of the show to me, and I'm already in love with her. So
love it. And Pete?
I'm finding myself intrigued by the Inquisitor role here. I think Merrick it's a nice tease to throw him into this show, especially because we saw the end of Merrick. So there is another kind of intercut parallelism between Maul and Merrick, and to see how Merrick goes from Inquisitor here to green gas bomb in Ahsoka. I'd kind of like to see how he becomes a ward of the Night Sisters.
Night Sister magic. We know it's all green gas.
That's a pretty dope transition.
I have to say, we've had a lot of things to say critical of the Lawson and family storyline, but there was one moment that hit me so hard, which is the moment where Lawson is coming around a corner and he's got his hand in his hair, the back of his neck, and his elbow out because he's nervous. And he turns the corner and he sees his son making the same gesture. And just immediately you can see he has this moment of, that is my son. I love him. And why is he carrying the burdens of the world on his shoulders the way I am? It's because he let these 2 Jedi stay with us. What an idiot my son is. I love him so much. And all of that was conveyed in a half-second look, which I would normally say is amazing acting. Now I'll say it's amazing animation. But that one moment was like, okay, I have a rocky relationship with my dad. I love him very much. I'm here for father sons. Let's go.
For sure. I'm down with that too.
All right. Awesome. Well, AK, where can people find stuff you're doing?
I am on Instagram at Iron Kingdom Adventures, and I'm on Twitter as AK Maiden.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check them out. Love the stuff you post, always good stuff, and really excited to talk to you more about disability and those models you're looking at. Mr. Pete, you do a podcast or two.
I do a podcast or two. You can find all the shows that I'm up to at truestory.fm. You can find my writing at itsmepete.com. And you can find my books. I've got two now. One of them's fiction, one of them's nonfiction. Fiction one's new. You should check it out. It's called Lattice, and more coming this year.
Yeah, I have finally some downtime over this weekend and a plane ride next weekend, and I'm looking forward to reading it at least one of those two occasions. So
it's a perfect plane ride book, I hear.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. It'll be weird to me to not be reading it on my phone. We'll have to see how that works. So, all right. Well, thank you both so much. This has been a great conversation. Thank you to all of our listeners. Live long and prosper. And we're out.
Awesome.